Hey guys, welcome to an episode that we're going to go backwards in time. You may recall, or I may have not even posted it yet, but about a year ago, I was doing some work on this 1918 Gibson mandolin. It was cracked, the body was caving in on itself, the neck was out of whack. And so I took it apart, learned a lot of lessons in doing that, stripped it down, fixed the cracks that we had going on here, and stripped some finish off of it that was not the original finish. So it comes complete with this hole up there where I think somebody had a screw eye or something that was hanging up, and it started life, at least in my world, as one of the instruments hanging up on the wall hanger. And Tam would sit there and look at it, and at some point I was told, well, let's strip that down, somebody wants it, and it turned out to be Tammy. And there's a picture of her, I'll put it on my site, where she's going like this. I handed it to her and she knew it came from Fred, and she signed Fred. Wait a minute, I know how to do this. Wow, modern technology. Look at that picture. There she is, and this is the same mandolin. Okay? So, let's talk a little bit about when you do heavy work on something like this, when you're steaming, when you're clamping and gluing, especially if you're using some kind of a finish strip or something like that. You want to leave this sit for a while. So this has been sitting. This would have been Tam's birthday present this year, but she left us about 4.5 months ago. Anyway, I missed seeing her sitting over at her work area. But about simultaneously I was working on this. I was working on a giant version of this. Gibson, by the way, this is about 1918, or at least the number inside says so. Gibson did a series of these instruments that got progressively larger based on the same design, all the way up Mando cello, all arch tops with an oval sound hole, all the way up to the Mando-bass. And I was working on putting the back on a Mando-bass. And what do you know? I got it back together. It's been sitting around. Even though we're in Malibu where there's a little bit more humidity, the ocean is right there. I can see it out the window. But the time has come now where we're going to revisit the Mando-bass, and we were thinking about leaving the original finish on the front, but some of the steam work that had to be done to get everything back together kind of precluded that. There was going to have to be finish put on the sides and back. There was numerous cracks, cleats, whatever you want to call it, patchwork and whatever. So the time has come where I'm looking at the instrument, looking at the tuners, and seeing that there's a couple of things that we need to take a look at there. On some, I think this Mando-bass is somewhere between 1916 and 1922, same kind of vintage as this. But as it's been settling in back to itself, there's a little bit of glue on the where the back meets the side, and I've got the hide glue going over there. And that is really the only thing that didn't hold together from the repairs. So we're gonna move the camera while the hide glue is heating up. I'm gonna tell you a little bit about hide glue right now. I got away from the stuff in the brown bottle. I got some good European hide glue out of, like I said, Europe. I'll try to remember to give you a link below. I got a good book about violin and cello restoration, and it's the Weishar, I think that's how you say it, and Zimmerman book. It's ungodly expensive, but it goes through every possible repair you could make in a violin, a cello, and extrapolate those into bass instruments that are traditional bass instruments, not the giant version of this. But the hide glue, if it's hydrated right, it comes in granules. If it's hydrated right, your working time is only about 1.5 minutes. So we're going to have to take that in consideration. We're going to keep the hide glue heater close to us and get this final repair, and then we're going to be looking at stripping down the top so we can get ready to refinish it. And part of that refinishing is I'm finally going to get some finish on this, and I'm really excited about that. So let's go take a look at this Mando-bass. All right, guys, talk about a cumbersome camera angle, but I'm going to show you the mandolin, and the part to impress here is that there's a lot here that's exactly the same when it comes to design. So you can't beat that. The Gibson, we pulled the tuners off so we can clean up everything and make it part of the finish and at least get it clean. But as we come down, this part right here, there's a couple notches and there's binding in there. And if you look at this, it's exactly the same. You've got this part has its own little notch out. There was some binding in there. I think we'll replace that, but it comes down to here. This is certainly elevated. There's a radius just like the one right here. The binding is an alternating kind of on a parallelogram. I don't know if that's what you call it, but the same thing here. But on the Mando-bass, you have 2 rows, but there's definitely an arch. We don't see the cutaway on the lower fretboard that we see here. There's binding on the inside of the sound hole. Same here. Now, there's a little bit of dust on here, but this body is just massive. Now, there's binding that starts here. Again, that would be same area as here. This part is offset here, binding here, and then the binding is missing on this. So I'm going to restore the binding. But this binding goes all the way around. It's in great shape. The areas that we're concerned with where the steam got to everything is pulling it together. I think I'm going to give you an episode link right up there right about now. If I haven't published it before, I will soon. But there's some marks here, and there's significant amount of stuff missing along the edges. There were a couple of cracks, but they were very light. In this area, there's one that's pretty long. But let's flip this over now, and we'll get to what is going to be glued up, and that is this area right here. Okay, starting up at the headstock on the back side, those tuners are really something else. They're like for a winch line or something. Anyway, big, huge, giant gears. I've got them all marked so we know which one was what. But coming here, I think I've shown you a harp guitar that had this ebony strip on the back side of the neck. And then let's get over to here. Again, we'll use this as an example. Everything comes together the same way. I will tell you that there is a locating peg right in here, the same thing as here. And when you start digging into this to take this off, there is a huge block right here that comes all the way back into here, okay, into here. In fact, I will take this off here so you can kind of see what's going on. The proportions are the same. See that there? There is a locating pin right here, and there's a detail of the neck joint. You see the exact same thing here on a bigger scale. So when you're going in to try to get this back off, that locating pin is going to give you a problem. So expect that, and also expect that if you spend a lot of time steaming this, this is all going to get mushy, and you don't want that. But I have the parts in here, and there's a brace that goes right there, but there's the repair. So this, you can basically take and measure this and develop a scale. So if I lay this here, that big part here is going to come all the way back into here. So if you ever have to take the neck off of one of these things, expect that there's going to be a locating pin that's going to appear to be hung up. Expect that. But let's take a look at the rest of this. There was some patchwork to be done here. You see here. And there was quite a bit of cracking here and here, and especially down here on the end. Let me move the camera a little bit closer so you can see that. Okay, there were a bunch of cracks along the edges here, 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 and here. And so you use an edge clamp. I got a really big one here just to kind of show you. You open this up, and what this does is it moves these jaws closer together. You see that? So this thumb wheel will let you adjust that. And then what happens is, with the crack open, you put these on either side of the crack, then you tighten these down. There's always got to be padding here, that's for sure. And then once everything is tight here, and you don't want to go too far into the concave here, because then you'll start to mess with the radius. At the same time, you want to make sure that the cleats you've put in get up to here before you try and pull these end cracks together, because pulling these together will cause these to spread above this convex here. So once that's done, you tighten these up, and then you can turn this and it will actually pull this together and then pull the crack together. But there was a significant amount of work done here. The only access was the sound hole. So we did the 10-string crack hack. How do you like that? That's a Grover Imperial, but it's 2 pieces of wood. I'll give you an episode link on how to make these and how they work. But you basically fish a string with a cleat on it, meaning a number 10 guitar string that's still got the little roundy deal at the end of it. I forget what they call them, but you pull that up through the sound hole with a piece of dental floss on the other end, and you pull that up through the crack, and then you sit here like this once the cracks are put together, and you pull the wire up, and you'll basically pull the cleat into place. And there's 1, 2, 3 of those on some of these cleats here, and that's how you do it from the inside if something cracks open after you got the back on. I had the benefit of the back being off. Now I want to show you something up on top here that really is important. Now the end pin can go down in this area down here that you can't see, but it also can go here, so you can stand this up and play it like a guitar without it being straight up and down. So there is a brace that goes from here inside all the way across to here, and there's only one way for it to go in, and there's a slot in there. It's kind of like a neck joint, but it's kind of like a beam, and it goes from here to here. And the only way you can tell which way it goes in is that brace has scars on it from this being put in numerous times. So now that brace in there fits in a certain slot, but you can put it in backwards and it won't bottom out right. And if that brace pops off inside, there's no way to fix it unless you take the back off again. So in order to determine what that was, this end pin has been put in so many times that it left a scar on this side of the brace, and that's how you know how to do it. Voice of experience. Okay, out of everything that was apart on this thing for years, back, off, cracks, twists, everything having to be winched back together with steam, especially on the bottom end. When it finally settled into itself, what we have is this area right here, and only right here. There's a little bit of open space where the glue has cut loose, and the side is out just a tad. This is easily clamped by going across the body. We'll shield the body with leather, clamp it, and put some new hide glue in there. Okay, let's start off with the hide glue. The hide glue needs to be maintained between 140 and 145 degrees. So you don't boil it, but you only have a minute and a half of work time. So it's fluid, it's a good mix, and it will go right down into where it needs to be, which is up here in this area. But we're going to keep that hot water, and we are going to monitor the temperature very closely. Okay, so I will tell you, if you're going to need clamps and some strategy to figure out how to get that glue in there and to get the clamps where you need to pull this in and this together, you need to get that done before you start working with your glue and be ready to rock and roll. Okay, pay close attention here. The hide glue is still in the heater. It's hot. But when you're going to cross clamp, because I need to pull this area in here just a little bit, about 1.5 millimeters or 2. And in order to pull that in, if I put this clamp across the body and there's nothing to stop it, it's going to slip around and go one way or another. And I want to focus my clamping on one spot here so I don't split out what I've already done. So I'm going to take over here where I know the area is where it needs to be and it is tight, and I'm going to clamp that. So by pulling things across the body, that is going to want to kind of put pressure here, which is going to radiate that way, and that could crack what I have going on already. I remember what a nightmare this was to get this ready. I'm also going to go in there with a palette knife and pull that up just a little bit so I can get the glue in there. But so this doesn't slip, I've got that clamp over here. You can see it would stop it from going the way it wants to go. And then on top of that, I've got pieces of leather, so I can get the leather to stick out just above this part here. So when I'm pulling the clamp in, the leather will actually act as a guide to make sure that these line up. This is good stuff. Leather strips. So I got everything ready. I'm gonna get my palette knife and I am going to start putting glue in there. Now remember, I've only got 1.5 minutes before things start come together. I've got hot water in the glue heater, and I can take that if there's any drips, but we're just going to get our hide glue in there like so and work fast. Now it might be better if I stood it up on the edge, but I do not want hide glue glopping all over the place. Is that even a word? Glopping all over the place. And then once I get the hide glue in there, I can take my palette knife and go along and make sure that that hide glue is everywhere I need it to be. I can take my palette knife and put hide glue on the top and then go in like so and make sure that everywhere I need that glue, it is there. I'm getting up on about 1.5 minutes now. And I'm not kidding about that. Okay, so there we go. We're going to get everything off that we don't want on here with this hot water. Okay, like so. And then we're going to cross clamp. Open that up a tad. Put our leather piece there like so. Get that as level as possible. All right, there we go. Let's wait for hide glue to dry. Pan's still hot, all good. You always want to remember when you're done with your hide glue, make sure that the top has been opened and closed and wiped off. And you need to refrigerate this, because if you don't, it will develop mold and it will be shot. Next thing you remember is do not let this boil. Do not let this boil. You can see that it's starting to coagulate already. It will be almost solid by the time it cools off in the refrigerator, and that's what you want. But do not let this sit out, short of when you take your mixture when it's granules and put warm water and let it come together. Always keep this refrigerated. Okay, once this is done, we're gonna have some razor blade work to do, you know, this kind of stuff where you tape off a blade to where just the part you want to work on, that glue seam is where it needs to be, fine sandpaper. And then we're going to be looking at getting the finish going on that, which will also give me the ability to finally get this one done. Separation on the front bottom there, we got that fixed up, it glued up overnight, everything is fine. We're going to pay a little attention to here. Remember what a struggle we had getting this to come together, and clamping and steaming and all that kind of thing. So I've got a piece of 16th inch mahogany that matches everything pretty well, and there's a little indent right here, a drop down. So I'm going to put this on there, and we'll let that glue up and get it to curve around there, and then we'll plane that down, and that'll look good. I want you to pay attention to right here. There's an end pin hole up here. So again, you could play this on its side like you would typically play a guitar, but this was here for that. And then remember that the brace that goes across the back diagonally, the way to make sure that that goes in not upside down or backwards is you will see scrapes on one side midway, a little bit more than midway up the side of the brace where this had been put in. And then right here you can tell that this is mainly where it was used, because wherever the mounting holes were for the tailpiece and the screws that put all that together, the back and forth motion and the weight has caused some light splits here over 100 and some years. And so we're going to fill those in with conventional glue, and then use a little bit of sawdust that is created in its own special way that I can't tell you about until it's over, and then I still won't tell you. At the end of it, we're going to get these ready and stabilized, and then we should be ready to strip the finish off the top. Okay guys, you can look right here for the hole for this scrap apparatus, and you can see how deep this crack is. Is it superficial? What is it's going through the end block, so or the tail block, which means this is not solid, which means this is glued onto here. So I want this glue to get in here as deep as possible. So I'm going to use my piggy suction cup thing here. Now, I talked to Fred a little bit about this, and he wasn't aware that in Cremona, Italy in the 1500 and 1600 that they had these piggy suction cup things, and that maybe they weren't using to push these in. So I told him, well, people use these now, Fred. You see my beautiful face. Yeah, it's a modern thing, Fred, and your science has to move forward. So he's over there dying while he's listening to me. But you pump this in. So if this suction is going to stick on here like that and push the glue in, if you pull it off, it's going to pull it out. And so you just get on the edge and you push down several times, and it pushes the glue down in there. Now, Fred seems a little hesitant about that. Again, his family has had probably a couple hundred years of experience, but I reminded Fred that you really need to pick up the pace and watch the channel where the guy is living in his parents' basement wearing nothing but socks doing repairs just like this. Now the important part about this is you need to do the grandma spit technique. You remember when you were in church and you had your cowlick, your Dennis the Menace thing, and she would just spit on her fingertips and mash your hair back into place. They didn't have Aquanet back then. Well, maybe they did. But you certainly didn't want to do the Dolly Parton, Tammy Wynette, Aquanet move in church, now did you? So we just played the grandma spit game. Important technique in fake Lutheranism-ness. right, there we go. This is a great coffee table. And here's what I've learned by working on the mandolin. When you get something like this and you're stripping it and you're taking the stuff off, you have the urge to keep going, and if it gets too wet, what ends up happening on these curved surfaces, you want to remember that in a tree, the vascular bundles run up and down. They're separated by rings and a thin wall of meristematic tissue, etc., etc. But when you start getting this wet down in here where that convex is and where it's been carved down, the vascular bundles are exposed and they will start to come up because they start to swell. And if you make the mistake of pulling on one of those, you will end up with a little channel in the top of this. So we're going to leave this sit, and there's going to be some sanding and all kinds of stuff to do, and we'll catch that in the next episode, and then you'll see the finish go on it. And the good part for me is that little mandolin will get finished with the same stuff this one does, and that will be very, very meaningful to me because of that little girl in that picture back there. Thanks for watching, guys. Give me a like. It's always a pleasure when Fred shows up in one of my videos. Huh, Fred?
Yeah.
There we go. You'll pay extra for that before it's over, believe it.
About $100.